Welcome back to the NAPC Virtual Summer Short Course. I'm Abby Christman, Principal Planner and Landmark Preservation with the City and County of Denver, and also Vice Chair of the NAPC Board of Directors. And I'll be the moderator for our final session in this year's short course. It is putting the NAPC Messaging Guide to work. So first, a few housekeeping items. As you can see, continuing education credit instructions are listed on the slide. You can also find these instructions repeated throughout the presentation in the chat tab. We invite you to ask questions throughout the webinar, and we'll get to them as time allows. So just if anything occurs to you that you want to know, questions you want to ask, just go ahead and put those in the Q&A tab. And then if you see any other questions in there that you want to know the answers to, you can upvote them. So we encourage you to get in, ask your questions, or look and see what other people are asking. Upvote the ones you really want to hear, and those are the ones we'll get to first. And then also please take a moment to review NAPC's Code of Conduct, which is also posted in the chat. So now I'm really happy to introduce our speaker, Cindy Olnick, communications consultant who has been working with NAPC to produce our new messaging guide for local preservation programs. So I'm going to turn it over to Cindy.
All right. Thank you, Abby. And congratulations to everyone. You made it to the end of the course. So you have to leave through the gift shop, and this is it. So I hope you have found this course as useful and inspiring as I have. And I'm really glad to be here today to talk about this new resource. I'm going to ask you one more time. I know you've done it 9 times, but if you wouldn't mind doing this first little poll, that just so we know who's in the room right at this moment. So if you could just note your primary role, that would be great. I'm going to skip it myself. And then I believe Abby is monitoring. So
I still see responses coming in, so I'll give it a little bit longer for a few more responses.
Perfect.
But so far it looks like the majority of our attendees are commissioners with about equal numbers as municipal staff. And then we have scattered in there some state, regional, federal staff, and a few nonprofit volunteers and practitioners. So pretty good group, but yeah, looks like it's about 50-50 commissioners and municipal staff.
Excellent. This is for you all. Quick learning objectives. It's all about using the guide. So we're going to go through it real quick. We're going to kick the tires, apply it in real time. We're going to brainstorm with each other about how to use it. And I want you to leave here today with at least one specific way you can use it in the next week. So we're going to skip this next slide, which is the results. So thinking about all the other sessions, not that you've been able to attend them all, but they all have something in common besides being led by amazing people and having to do with historic preservation. And I know I'm biased, but I tend to think it's messaging. Funding, for instance, how are you going to set your application apart from the others? You're going to make a clear, compelling case for your program, right? Outreach, that's pretty obvious, but connecting with different audiences, telling your story. Incentives, how are people going to know what's out there? How are you going to know what incentives are most important to people? Demolition by neglect. Apparently you're supposed to be nice. And obviously, be clear about what demolition by neglect is and why it's a problem and how it's determined, and clarify the process and help people through it, and positioning yourself as a resource, right? And resilience planning, conveying the hazards in your community and how to mitigate them. Also engaging the community and gauging public sentiment in policy formation. Trades and contractors. How are you gonna, connecting with the owners, connecting with the developers so they understand that it does matter who does the work. And since we don't have enough people to do the work, promoting the programs and the employment opportunities so that we do make sure the right people are working on these buildings. telling a fuller story, also fairly obvious, amplifying unheard voices, being clear and compelling, and building relationships and trust over time. And then the small scale development, connecting. It's all about connections, right? Relationships, connecting with your neighbors, using your history to market, both to influence the development and market the properties, and using your role to build the relationships that you can use for community-based policy strategies. So, and more. I'm just pointing out a few examples of how really messaging affects virtually every aspect of your work, and increasingly it is our work. So I had the pleasure of working with NAPC over the past year to develop this hot off the presses messaging guide for local preservation programs, which is in your handout section. You can download it. I hope you already have, perhaps. If you haven't, it's you can get it for, as my mom would say, free nothing right now. Well, not right now, but after we're done. This was a year in the making. It started at Forum last year, where I led a session and had a table in the lobby. Perhaps you were one of the wonderful people who gave valuable input to shape this project. And then we analyzed all the results we got at Forum, and we sent out a survey. We had 261 people who actually completed the whole survey, 900 text responses and comments that we filtered through and analyzed. And these were the top 3 concerns. And it's pretty obvious, but it was confirmed: conveying the value of preservation, advocating for better policy and practice, and explaining the process. So we had finite resources. So we stuck with the big ones, and we used the other responses as part of the messaging in the guide. We had a stellar project team who was very involved, and then we had it reviewed by dozens of volunteer colleagues, including probably many of you. So thank you again for your time and your insight. You made the guide much better. So it can't do everything. It's not a quick fix, but it can help you have more productive conversations, demystify the local process, and position your work as the positive collaborative effort that it is. I'm really interested in social science messaging and communications. So not just yelling what you think people need to hear, but communicating in a way that connects with deep values that we all share and are based on cognitive behavior and what motivates behavior and how people perceive information. I am not a scientist. I've just been reading about this, and I'm super excited to at least start trying to implement it in the field. So that's exactly what this is doing. So we're going to go through the world's most boring slides. I apologize, but the guide itself, again, because of resources and because it's focused on messaging and words, there's no images, there's no graphics, it's all text, and it's a lot. So I apologize, but hopefully within all that, there's something that you can use. I would recommend scrolling, just checking out the how to use the guide. I typically think, communication shouldn't have to be explained how to use it, but in this case, there it is. It is primarily for local preservation commissions and staff. However, there's a lot of information that can be used by anyone interested in historic preservation, and we hope that anyone interested will take advantage of it. And this messaging, one of the reasons that it's so like bare bones is because it is like a tool literally a toolkit, like copy it and paste it and refine it and make it your own. And so we have blanks for, the name of your city and the name of your program, so you can customize it. And obviously, it's not going to work the same for everyone, but we're hoping that you can go in and find information that will advance your work and make it easier. Again, using it as part of the big picture. Messaging is just one part of communicating, but it's a critical one. And then keep the conversation going. This is just the beginning. And we really hope that you'll use the feedback form that's linked in the slides at the end, but also in the guide, to let us know what you think, and also to keep it going on the NAPC listserv. and really, work out problems, and, because you're all like dealing with so much of the same stuff in different ways, that I think this is a perfect way that you can help each other, as you always have been. And then I'm just going to run through the sections of the guide really quickly. So it's general communications tips. We look into the future using specific examples, doing what I say, not what I do, regarding the images and the graphics. Be careful about myth busting and data, accessibility, and above all, start where you are and just keep at it, because it is a journey. I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm still figuring it out. So we'll just figure it out. There are some tips on word choice. Obviously, we want to be clear, but what does that mean? We want to avoid jargon. We talk about it all the time, but what does that look like? In some cases, you're going to need to teach people what the jargon means, because they're going to need to know. So it's, there's not like a list of do's and don'ts. It's all, unfortunately, going to be, case by case. Equity. Obviously, equity concerns far transcend this guide, but we do take the opportunity to address a few equity issues around communicating and building relationships. And then we got so much feedback on specific terms that we added a chart that are just some of the common terms that are being revisited around the country. Your situation may differ completely. It's not asking you to change. It's just making you aware of the conversations. And this will continue to change. And historic preservation is one of those terms, as you know. We talk about connecting with different audiences, what elected officials consider most important. And again, a lot of this is common sense, but when you're in the moment, it might help to have like something handy just to sort of refresh your memory. Your colleagues in government, property owners, developers, historically excluded communities, again, far beyond the scope of this guide, but we do offer some tips, and the peer reviewers offered some really good non-messaging tips as well that they have found helpful, and the general public. So we all have to communicate with the broader community, and I get that. Purely from a communications perspective, my communications mentor told me there's no such thing as the general public, because if you dilute your message enough to reach everyone, you really, really effectively reach no one. So I think we need a happy medium, where you do consider your audience as much as you can, but you don't have the time or the infrastructure perhaps to, have a different set of messaging for everyone. And then we have charts. We have lots of charts responding to concerns. So, and we can talk more about this specifically, but there are two responding to concerns section. One is about preservation. This is in the audiences section. And one is about the design review process, which we'll get to in a minute. Also, in terms of advancing policy and practice, this is just a very short section on, in addition to the day-to-day work of just getting things done and getting through your list, you can use this messaging to start connecting your work to other local processes and departments, right? Because, in order to be included in decisions, there's a concept. And, to get preservation into your master, your general plan, all that kind of stuff. So, and which will serve you well far into the future. Now, and again, this is going to be mastering the obvious, but the universal concern about devaluing preservation really falls into two dimensions that were pointed out by Ken Bernstein, one of the peer reviewers. Thanks, Ken. Either it's just not a priority, it's a non-issue. It's nice to have, pretty buildings are great, but it's hardly essential. And then there's the active obstacle, like it's actively undermining other needs and priorities in the community. It gets in the way, it prevents affordable housing. You've heard it all before. So the most effective way to convey your relevance is to connect your work to pressing community needs. And again, that sounds obvious, but what does that actually look like, right? So again, this is just a quick image about how it really does connect. And then the guide goes into messaging that does connect. Not every one of these areas is called out specifically in the messaging section, but you will see it throughout. So most of them are. All right. And then we get into the messaging itself. So a lot of people said, well, we have to start at the very beginning and just tell people what preservation is. So there's some sample language that just goes into, it's a broad term for different ways of treating older places people care about, like, rehab and funding and all that kind of stuff. People care about older places for many reasons, and then there's a laundry list that may help in your value conversations. The types of places we preserve include X, Y, and Z, and preservation works differently at the local, state, and national level. Again, all this stuff forwards and backwards, but it might be helpful if you don't already have that in place. And then we get into why preservation matters. And there are two takes on this. We start with general themes. And again, this is going back to the social science sort of stuff as much as I could work it in. Again, connecting it to pressing local issues, change and balance, because, we all know, I can't change my curtains, right? So it's talking about the balance between, and it's about managing change and all that. And a shared stake in the future. If we're looking ahead, in the end, preservation isn't about a specific building. It's about what you want your community to be, what you stand for, and your community's values. And together, through your actions and your decisions every day, you're deciding that. So, again, the level of loftiness will depend on the situation, but it's just trying to get to that. And then we get into specific issues. So we do have specifics on all of these. And as you're probably already doing, our general recommendation is that you position preservation as not the solution to anything, but as an essential part of the solution to many things. This is just a shot of what it looks like in the chart. So you've got your affordable housing, we've got key messages, we've got supporting points, and then we've got examples, case studies, things like that you might find helpful. And then we get into how local preservation works. And again, you may have this down, which is great, but it just has some sample text to the extent it's helpful in terms of talking about who you are, what you do. We did pick design review as the process to get into a little bit of detail because it is so ubiquitous and it was so commonly mentioned in the research for this project as a challenge. So that's why, but you can use the same approach for anything, designation, incentives, what else, whatever. And we have a couple of sample graphics, clearly I'm no designer, but just to help to whatever extent it's helpful. We did a couple of graphics that you can, there's a link at the graphics that you can go to a shared file in Canva. You need a free account. Canva, as you probably know, is an online graphics tool that, it makes it easier for non-designers to make at least more polished looking graphics. So, and anyway, that's a whole other issue, but you can copy those and then tailor them to your specific needs. And then we get into discussing design review with tips from your peers, just helping people understand what's going on, explaining why, so people don't think you're not just sitting around twirling your mustache thinking of reasons, thinking of ways to frustrate people. Say yes. Sometimes you can say yes. Show how it works. Stick to the guidelines so people don't think your decisions are personal or arbitrary. Start with the good news and admit reality, because we know that preservation has, it does ask a lot, and there's only so much you can do. So, and we did hear from peer reviewers that honestly, just being candid, not criticizing your program, but just saying, I get it, I understand, can help break down barriers and help you build those relationships. And then we have the second chart of concerns about the process. And again, some of the peer reviewers found these not helpful at all. They had tried them. Some of them found them helpful. You do what works for you. And then we end up with even more links. So we've got resources, including the great programs that NAPC does. And then we have sources. Now, these are repeats of the links that are throughout the guide, and they're in chronological order by section. These links are going to go bad. Some of them already have, I'm sure. So the idea is, if the link breaks, you can come here and search for the whole article or whatever, and hopefully find the information you're looking for. All right, that's it in a nutshell, which brings us to our second poll. Based on what you've heard, based on your quick reaction, which part of the messaging guide interests you the most at this very moment? Ooze. Oh yeah, okay. So if you go to the by the way, I'm just learning this. If you go to the closed polls, you can see the results from the other ones. All right, so Abby, take it away.
Yeah, so we have responses coming in. So far, it looks like the most votes are for why preservation matters. Following that is concerns with advancing policy and practice. And then pretty much, equal number of votes for responding to concerns, different audiences, general communication, discussing design review. So pretty evenly balanced. A word choice doesn't come quite as high, but all the other ones are pretty evenly balanced. So people are looking to get a lot of different things out of the messaging guide.
I'm so glad. I hope you find them. Really, seriously. Actually, I know somebody who already has, and we're going to bring her on. Please welcome our special guest, Allison Break from San Marcos, Texas. Welcome,
Hello.
Allison.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. So Allison reached out the other day with a question and immediately got roped into doing this. So thank you. So let's share with our guests what we were talking about the other day.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know me, and that's probably a lot of you, I am the Historic Preservation Officer for the City of San Marcos, Texas. We're located between Austin and San Antonio. We're a city of about 67,000. We have 7 historic districts. 6 of them are residential and 1 is commercial. And the reason I was contacting Cindy was because I had we have a commission of 7 members, and one of the commissioners at our last meeting asked to talk about one of the properties within our historic districts, which is not only it's not only in our one of our local districts. It was recently designated in 2019 as a local landmark, so it's an individual landmark. It's a church, an African American church that has been vacant for a number of years. The church sold it to this particular citizen in 2017. And so he's just kind of been sitting on it. It's not in the best condition. We all recognize it. People think it's an eyesore. And so the commissioner who asked to talk about it was, just wanting to have a status report, I guess. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, we can put it on an agenda, which would be fine. But I don't want this to come out of the blue for the property owner. And I also, that commissioner in a separate email was throwing around the term demolition by neglect. And it's kind of accusatory, right? So I didn't want that, again, to come across negatively. We are, the commission already has that reputation of being the hysterical commission. So
Right.
So I first went to the messaging guide because I like to have, it's nice to have those talking points, just even little blurbs. And it's not that I wasn't finding what I needed. I felt like, well, maybe I'll just call Cindy and chat with her about it and see if I can, if there's something, or maybe she can point me to the right place in the guide.
Right. So I immediately had 500 questions,
yes.
And because every situation's different.
Right.
So I was interested in why is it on, why do they want the status report? What's the deal with the owner? What do you know about the owner? Do you know why they purchased the property? Do you know, if you had to speculate, what would the outcome be of of this discussion.
Right.
And, what kind of messaging do you need on both sides, really, right? For the commission and the owner.
Right. It was more education on the commission side. I guess education all the way around, but really from what I wanted to get across to the property owner was this is not an accusation of you taking not the best care. We don't want you. I don't want you to feel like we are accused. The city is accusing you of not taking care of your property, which he's doing the minimum. It's boarded. I don't think it's an imminent danger of anything. He's not the easiest. Just he's one of our slightly stubborn property owners, so he's not the easiest. He kind of gets his hackles up.
But he was involved in the landmarking, right?
Yeah, he was the one who brought forward the landmarking. So,
right.
And the little backstory, when he first bought the property, he called me, or before he bought the property, he called wanting to know what he could or couldn't do with the property. And I've been doing this 12 years now, so I kind of have it down about what you can and can't do. And so, but as a newbie, I would have loved to have a messaging guide like this because, a lot of planners, myself included, was just thrust into this position as HPO. And so sometimes you don't know all the right words to say. And having a guide like this really helps to identify, again, why it matters, what you do this for. It's not just because you feel like it. It's because we all care about the community.
Right. So. Exactly. So where we came out was, like, for instance, the city doesn't own the property. It's the one landmark that the city doesn't own. So does the commissioner know that, right? Or is the commissioner going into this meeting thinking, it's all about assumptions, right? Thinking that they have to make a decision about what to do. Do you want the owner to show up and see the commission and feel like ambushed right away? And what's that going to do to the further discussions as you try to work with this person to do something with this property, right? So you really want to manage that really carefully. So where did you come out?
Yeah, so I first actually kind of drafted something to talk to my director. So we have a standing meeting and I just brought this up to her and using a lot of your language about, I think we need to give more information about what it is that he's asking, more information about that it's, ours. It's not ours to control. And again, this is Texas, so we're a very property rich state. Do we even want to have this on the agenda? And after talking to her, we do want to have it on the agenda. We made sure that in the memo that goes out to the commission that there's a lot of that language in that memo that will be in the agenda packet. And then I based my email off of that agenda packet. Like the commission cannot take action. We felt that having you present at the meeting would open that dialogue for constructive dialogue. And he actually responded very well to it. He's usually the type that's like flies off the handle, and I was very much prepared for that. And when I got oh, thanks. Well, I won't be in town, but I'll be there virtually. And I'm looking forward to it. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
I know you say it doesn't, it's not the solution, but man, it sure felt like it in that moment.
Exactly. It's not about hitting home runs every day. It's about, not reading not thinking people can read your mind and not working based on assumptions. Right.
And that was, I guess my past experience with him, has clouded a bit of it. I do assume that I'm just going to get berated immediately. So you kind of go in with that armor up, and when it doesn't happen, you're like, oh, okay.
Right. Doesn't need to happen. It's a long game. It happens, conversation by conversation. Unfortunately, it's not a quick fix. But 30, 40 years of this, you'll be good.
Right? That'll be great. Yay. And it's funny because I was just I just had a staff meeting with my other planner coworkers, and I was like, I'm going to send out this messaging guide to you guys because, they'll get asked about things. We have pre-development meetings all the time, and they're not the experts either. So
Excellent, excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. And Allison was one of our volunteer peer reviewers. So thank you. She's already put in a lot of time on this.
Yeah,
So,
not a problem.
So thank you very much. Yeah. And so, so I guess I just want to open it up and let's see, where's my slide? Your turn. Your turn. All right. So I guess if we want to know, maybe let's look are there any Q&A? There's no questions. Fantastic. This is perfect. We're done.
No questions yet, but I would encourage everyone, this is your chance. When else do you get to have one-on-one coaching and counseling with your most pressing issues with a communication specialist? So encourage anyone to come forward if you have anything that you want to talk through. So we'll kind of maybe give a minute or two here and see if somebody wants to come forward with some questions.
And if not, we can talk about your articles, Abby. Because they're probably something that we've all seen before. Abby sent me some articles, again, that we've seen before that are your basic, let's see, one of them starts, is a structure a landmark or not worth saving? And the first word is, the brute stands 5 stories tall at the intersection of blah, 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 right? And then there's the price of progress. Historic preservation is a messy business. Private rights versus public interests. So honestly, Abby, these are just full of issues. You can just pick one and we can go from there. Oh, we do have a couple of questions now.
Oh, great. Let's see. Okay, so first up we have a question saying, the messaging guide, how would you suggest we introduce this to commissioners? As a whole or in chunks?
Good question. And the answer to everything is it depends. So it depends on who the commissioners are. Maybe you just start talking about it as a thing that exists. And it depends. So, it depends on, and I would love for the commissioners in the room to weigh in. You could chat in what you think. But honestly, I have a reputation for being very thorough. And this guide ended up like 3 times longer than it was supposed to be. So if it frightens you, if you look at it and just say, oh no, think about the chunks. Think about it and think about introducing what is relevant at the time, because all I care about is what I need to know right now. And my concern with the guide was that it was so big that it would make info hard to find. So there's a lot of cross referencing in there. And we do just try to be very, very clear on the different sections. So, yeah, so I would probably do the chunks. I would think about what is the work before you in the commission in the next couple weeks or the next month, and what opportunities are there to bring in things from the guide, like one at a time. Oh yeah, by the way, oh yeah, I heard about that. Oh yeah, oh that's in the guide. Blah 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 blah. Let me go get it. That's my take. Abby?
Yeah, nope, that's great. Okay,
Yeah.
well, we're getting the questions coming in, so thank you.
Okay.
Keep adding your questions. So next up, somebody is looking for advice for how to work with city council to get what you want. So how do we deal with those? What's the best tips for dealing with the local politicians?
Okay, goes to the guide. I have it up in Acrobat. So let's see, scrolling down to the connecting with different audiences, elected officials. I click on the active table of contents link, which takes me right there. And it says elected officials and their staff may prioritize and/or value their constituents, the people who elected them, right? What does it have to do with the people who elected me and I want to elect me again? Are they satisfied? The bottom line, they may be more interested in data, return on investment, leveraging limited resources like everyone. Low risk or perceived risk of failure. And what this means is their reputation, right? The reticence for people with high profiles or who are in important positions to be the first person to do something, right? Everybody wants to be the leader in X, but only after somebody else has proved that it works, and it's not going to be a huge failure, right? And acknowledgement and visibility. So, I mean, these are public servants. They care about the community. I'm not saying they're just in it for the, the power, but you know who your folks are. And so using the messages about why preservation matters, again, making it relevant to the exact topic at hand at that very moment. You can talk about the economic activity generated by the use of older and historic places in their district. Make it very specific. And I know data is hard to find. I know it is. And so we do offer in the use specific local examples section some suggestions on where you might find some information. But we totally acknowledge that we need more of it. Specific success stories, again, from the district. And taking them. Not that they're lying around, waiting for things to do, but if you have an opportunity to take them for coffee in the new, the converted mill, or, take a route to somewhere that, oh my gosh, passes by a success story, or any sort of way to interject that. We all know if you get somebody to one of these places, they get it, or they have a lot more chance of getting it, right? So how can you have an event at one of these places, that kind of thing. Examples of cost savings from reusing buildings. And we're not talking about, just the big monuments. We're talking about the buildings that they may not consider historic, right? Stories about places, again, older affordable housing, existing affordable housing, right? Small businesses in older buildings. Examples of widespread support. So you got that low risk. And of course, the photo ops. Gotta have the photo ops. So and the impact and availability of incentives for constituents. So that's what the guide says. Yay! I'm sticking to it.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so next up, somebody asked, I think they're wanting to really start using the guide, and says, how do you start putting together a messaging plan for your commission based on this guidance? Particularly if you haven't done any education on preservation and so far have just stuck to running meetings and doing tours, where do you get started?
That's an excellent question. And we do take pains to say the guide is not about planning, which is a whole other thing, but nobody has time to plan, right? So the quick and dirty messaging strategy, and again, I'm going back to my mentor, Kibby LaRue Miller of Nonprofit Marketing Guide, who was amazing. Her words of wisdom to me were, so what and who cares, right? Because we live this stuff day in and day out, right? We assume people care about it, but they don't. So I always start with business goals, right? What do you have to get done? Like, can you pick a specific goal to get done? What is it going to take to get that done? Who makes the decisions? And what do they need in order to make the decision that works best for your community? And I know that, again, sounds obvious, but when you really start to put it down on paper and break it down, it's not about raising awareness, right? Why aren't we in the paper all the time? Well, do you want to be in the paper all the time? That depends. But to what end? I'm always asking that question. Why? Why? To what end? What is gonna save this place? What is gonna revitalize your community? And it may be people making decisions who you might not expect. So I would start super simple with a plan, because plans, right? You spend 6 months and then they sit and nobody ever looks at them again. But just focus on, what do you need to get done? Who are the people who are going to be most influential in getting that done? And what do they need to not just hear, but say? Because also communications always starts with listening. It's always about listening. And you'd be very surprised with what you hear, and understanding people, and finding common ground, right? So simple. Try to keep it to a page, whatever it is. And, call me. Allison did. Call me.
Thank you. So our next question, so it's getting a little technical more. So it says, our historic Main Street has 5 unoccupied storefronts. 3 of the properties are owned by one person and he doesn't do any repairs. Our city doesn't have any ordinances for neglect or being empty. I would like to get the ordinances changed. Has anyone had this experience? I would just start a little bit with my advice here would be really making sure this isn't just a preservation issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really best practice for any, to have citywide minimum maintenance. They're recommended, in the kind of building code, packages that cities adopt. There's standard minimum maintenance. And so if you don't have any citywide minimum maintenance, that's just not a preservation issue. There's surely going to be other groups in the city that are looking to, economic development, find the economic development people, find local businesses who would like to use that and wants to get that building fixed up or sold so that they could lease it. Find those other people. This is one of those cases where it's really not just a preservation issue. So you're going to have the strongest case for, requesting an ordinance update from the city if you can come together with a coalition of people that are wanting those updates, and then, approach your planning staff and see what the process is to try to encourage them to update some of those ordinances.
Yes. Yes.
And anything else to add? Okay.
Yeah.
So next up, it says we have a landmark that just went on the market. The realtor is also a major player in our city. What is the best way to start a conversation with that realtor and the owner? So I'd say it sounds like what they really want is to make sure they get like a sympathetic, how do they talk to them to make sure whatever's going to happen to that, and what, how do they get the real, it sounds like there's some concerns there about what's going to happen to it, now that it's gone on the market.
Honestly, I had this whole other project going about realtor education, and there are organizations who do realtor education programs that are like, you can market the historic nature of the property, and that's great, but depending on your market, like in Los Angeles, that's not going to fly these days, right? It's all about closing the deal as fast as you can and getting as much money as you can. So you have to be realistic too. So start with the money, maybe. What do you have economic incentives for keeping the property? And as you know, every situation is a little research project. What's the situation? What's the realtor done in the past? Who's selling it? You don't have to learn all of that, but just getting a sense of, maybe take them to coffee and just say, look, I'm not here, I just want to learn more about this because we're all about reusing buildings and keeping communities vital through the older properties, and just want to know, what your thoughts are. But now I'm talking myself out of that because that sounds stupid. So yeah, I would say think about the money, think about any incentives. People always want to, in LA, they want to do what they want with the property before they landmark it. So it comes down to whatever incentives you have. It comes down to, I think, talking about the value of preservation, and you get into this property rights situation where there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But in terms of messaging, the more you can talk about, maybe talk about why the owner bought it and what they think about it. And do they have positive connections to it too? Maybe ask the realtor. I'm just talking, I'm thinking out loud. Ask the realtor what they think about our older properties and their role in the vitality of the community, and use it as a learning opportunity so that you can reach out to that realtor and maybe start building a relationship over time. Maybe invite that realtor to an event, maybe do a workshop with that realtor or other realtors on how to market. You can call it how to market properties, but what you're talking about is different architectural styles and the value of preservation. And I know the Los Angeles Conservancy did a program. I know there are other programs too that might serve as good models, but
Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Please, save me. Yes.
No. We did something through the Main Street project or department here not too long ago for 2 of our downtown buildings that are vacant, and it was like an open house style. And we had obviously, I don't know if this has already been bought, but the property owner for both of them was there, and we had the Texas Historical Commission provided some renderings of what could be. And there was a special thing through the Texas Historical Commission, but I like the idea of having this open house where people got a chance to walk in and see the space. And, the property owners in these 2 particular instances have been holding on to them, and they haven't sold or, leased the space yet. So I think it's drummed up some more hype about the building itself. They both are on like corners and kind of, so maybe having some sort of open house with their Main Street staff and the property owner and the realtor, to come look at the space.
Totally helping them market the property and showing what's possible. I love that because it's again that change and balance issue. It's that general theme of we don't expect you to keep it exactly alike. It's the same, it's like what's it gonna take to be the next generation of this building, right? Yeah,
I think that's great, because I think one of the big things is try to be a resource, somebody that then you introduce yourself as, hey, did you realize this was a landmark? I could help tell you about what kind of incentives this building could get as a landmark. I could, that you're this resource, you can provide education. They can ask you, rather than, what are you going to do coming at them, really, but instead like, hey, I'm just wondering what the plans are. I could help you if you have curious, if you have a potential buyer who's interested in tax credits, depending on what the building is, I could help with that. And I know have had some good luck sometimes with our local nonprofit helping to find preservation buyers when something comes on the market that we're concerned about, going out and can you help matchmake and find somebody who would be a good fit for the building?
Absolutely. Ideally, you get it. That's what my program is about, is marketing it, so that before people buy it, they at least understand what it is. And yes, it's buried in the disclosures, but, boy, it'd be great if we just found the right buyers for these places. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, next question up, we have our nonprofit preservation group is on a campaign to create a historic preservation commission. What is the best practice or phrases to avoid when introducing the idea to City Council?
Okay, well, think about why you want to introduce the Preservation Commission. Maybe use environment and existing buildings, maybe, more than preservation at the moment. Talk about the connection. We want a preservation commission. We've been thinking about whatever the impetus is. We've been thinking about the change in the community, how it's growing, which is great. We've been thinking about the impact. We've been thinking about the places we've lost. We've been thinking about how we can use our existing environment as part of this revitalization process or part of this growth, right? Or insert the issue here. And there's a lot of ways to reuse there's a lot of ways to reuse existing places to meet these ends. And there's, if we did a commission for preservation, what it does is it unlocks tools that we can use to make this process smoother. I mean, it has to be true, obviously, but that position as we don't want to, yes, we want to protect what we have before we lose it. And that is certainly okay to say, but it's not just about protecting it. And it's not about the architecture. It's about the people, and it's about the community, and it's about what we want for the community, right? So what kind of district do you want? Do you want a district that reuses its history and that markets itself on its unique stories? That kind of stuff. So it's looking to the future, it's imagining possibilities, and it's using preservation as a tool, not as a gatekeeping mechanism. That's my take. Abby?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think have that vision for why you want it. And then I would just add, also have practical information or, statistics that show how it works, so that it's not, if you start getting the sky's going to fall. No, do a comparison. What are other cities in your region of your same size that have historic preservation commission, so that you can have the data? Well, hey, look, this is how it's working in these 15 other cities in our region. They're similar size. They have a similar, area, similar housing stock, whatever those comparisons are, or, if there's cities that your kind of city looks to as a model, or, so have those comparisons and say, look, it's working for these other cities. This seems like best practice. We want to be part of this larger, regional community that does this, and have those, sometimes people can feel better about it if it's like, oh, well, okay, they've had this for a while. It seems to be working fine for them. It's successful there. That can help ease the, ease tensions and kind of show, hey, look at how it's working elsewhere. So I'd also do some of that research and have some of that information.
It's lowering the perceived risk, right? It's like, we're not, inventing the wheel here. This is happening all across the country. I mean, don't make them, don't berate them, but yeah, it's like, oh yeah, this is just happening. This is the way it is. This is the new preservation. That's what Rethos does in Minnesota. They use the term the new preservation. What? If at least it gives people a breath to like, what? There's a different way to do it. Oh yeah, it's just about using. It's about using what we already have. I mean, it sort of makes sense, right? Yeah.
Okay, well, that looks like it is it for the questions we have.
Well, we've solved all the problems. I'm so excited. That's great.
So yeah, so I'm sure everyone probably at this point, after 2 days of sessions, are kind of ready to head on.
Yes, I just want to say one thing where I'm not going to go through these wonky slides, but I do want to know, is there one way you can use the messaging guide in the next week? Please, you can do the poll, you can chat it in, whatever's easier for you. I want you to leave here with like, oh yeah, that was a good idea. Just one thing that is part of what you're already doing. It's not going to be another thing on your list.
Let's see what we get. Okay, I think people may be exhausted after the last couple of days. I'm not seeing, at least I'm not seeing responses coming in.
That's okay, because
I see 3. There's one share. Oh, here they are. Okay.
Ah, here they are.
Yeah, Abby. Share it with my preservation commission. Share with the city planner. I plan to read the whole thing and share all or parts of it with fellow commissioners. I hope to go over the language and word use with our commission. I think that will be an invaluable tool. Okay, there's a bunch now.
Okay, great. Yeah, I can't see them.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. And again, if it's overwhelming, just letting them know that it exists, that this is a thing, we can actually change how we work by changing how we talk about things. I mean, it's a thing. I'm not going to go over these, but if you have any issues with downloading the guide or using it, navigating it, you can download the slides as a handout, and it's got little things. All right. It's also in how to use it. So these are the takeaways. It's all related. Connect your work to pressing issues in your community. Not a quick fix, but it can help you get started. Let us know how it works, and use the listserv for peer support. And go for it. You can do this. You got this. And questions, don't be a stranger. I want this to be useful. We all do. So we did this for you. So good luck.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And I'll say the way I will use it is just to have it on hand. We take turns on our staff of answering our general emails. And so just to have it there so that you get some of those general questions. Why are you doing this? What about this? To have that as a resource to pull from is so helpful.
That's great.
That's going to be my immediate use, is to have it there as I'm answering emails.
I'm so glad. And then make note, you guys, of what would work better, right? Because this is the first I know of something like this. So, or in this format. So this is a journey. Things change all the time. Language changes all the time. So, yeah, this is all a work in progress. So the more feedback you give us, the better we can make the next version, which is not going to be anytime soon. Don't worry, guys.
We want to keep updating this or keep adding additional. If there's topics that didn't get addressed here that you really want, let us know so that when we do future projects, we know what it is that you're looking for and what you need.
Excellent.
So thank you so much, Cindy, and thank you everyone for attending. If we didn't get to your question, please reach out over email. If you're not already a member of NAPC, we encourage you to join for free or deeply discounted access to ongoing virtual training opportunities, among other great benefits. You can find out more about all of our programs and resources in the Handouts tab. Again, all attendees of today's live session will automatically receive a certificate of completion via email. If you don't see it by Friday morning, please be sure to check your spam. If you're watching this on demand, you'll need to submit a certificate request. And thanks so much for joining NAPC for this year's short course. We hope you'll join us for future webinars, trainings, and for next year's forum.
Yes. Thanks for sticking in there, staying in there. Gold star. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.